Viewer discretion is advised.
New Orleans Saints, Marcus Davenport. New Orleans traded up to get Davenport in 2018, but through 4 seasons, it's been a mixed bag. He's been prone to injuries and has yet to reach double-digit sacks in any year. He did set a career high in sacks last year, so maybe he's about to turn the corner, but I think the Saints expected more on their investment thus far. New Orleans Saints, Archie Manning. Manning gets a pass for his historically bad win-loss record and mediocre stats because he played for the lowly Saints in the 70s and early 80s. While I do think he was better than his record in stats would indicate, I disagree with those who say in a better situation he would have been an all-time great. Outside of 2 to 3 seasons, his stats were below average even for his era. I will give him credit for having sex multiple times, which ended up preventing Tom Brady from winning at least 5 more rings. New Orleans Saints, Cameron Jordan. The Saints have a ton of really good players on defense, but I went with all-reliable Cameron Jordan. He had a bit of a slow start last year, but he still ended the season with 12.5 sacks in his last 11 games and 8.5 sacks in his last 4 games, showing he still has enough juice, no offense to Barry Bonds, to be an elite player. He's made the Pro Bowl 5 straight years, and I don't see why he won't do it again if he stays healthy. New Orleans Saints, Jameis Winston. Notoriously famous respecter of women's personal space, Jameis Winston actually took care of the ball pretty well last year before tearing his ACL. Sean Payton did a great job of neutering him from his Tampa days. Payton is gone now though, so will we see wild Jameis again? Either way, I think people realize he's not a great quarterback. Verdict? Properly. New Orleans Saints. Sean Payton retired to become a full-time pill popper, so now the glory years of Breeze and Payton are officially over in the Big Easy. Thanks to solid drafting, you have a really good defense, but it might be jeopardized by having Diet Deshaun Watson at quarterback. The NFL media has allowed Jameis Winston to rebrand himself as a goofy, lovable klutz, which is pretty gross but unsurprising. Winston is going to regress to throwing a shitload of interceptions, so get ready. I applaud you on being the only team in the NFC South to do shit against Brady in Tampa, going 4-1 against him since he arrived. But wait, what was that one loss? Oh yeah, that was a playoff game where your defense dropped several Brady interceptions, and Drew Brees had the worst game of his 20-year career to help Brady win another ring. Thanks a lot, you fucking pricks. As for other playoff losses, yes, the missed defensive pass interference call late in the 2018 NFC Championship game was terrible, but you still had multiple chances to win the game, but your defense gave up a game-tying field goal drive in regulation, got the ball first in overtime, which Breeze threw an interception, and then gave up a game-winning field goal. You just did not get the job done. Plus, you literally lost a home playoff game to Kirk Cousins the next year. I mean, wow. That's brutal, but not as brutal as giving up a 61-yard touchdown pass as time expires to lose. New Orleans Saints, Derek Carr. Derek Carr is one of the greatest losers in NFL history, and that's not a diss, that's an actual fact. The Saints decided to take a flyer on him to see if he could finally make himself into an elite quarterback. Hint, he's not going to. Carr has always been a massive tease. He's never won a playoff game. He's appeared in just 1 playoff game in his first 9 seasons. He got a couple MVP votes wrongly in 2016, and it looked like he was going to become a superstar, but he's never come close to that level since. Basically, he has proven that he is a good enough quarterback to break your heart at the worst moments. Therefore, his prove it rating is a 8 out of 10. New Orleans Saints, Chris Olave. Olave was one of the better rookie receivers we've had in recent memory, catching over 72 passes for 1,000 yards and 4 scores with, let's just say, mediocre quarterback play. Even though Derek Carr isn't exactly a Hall of Famer, he should still be better than what Olave had as a rookie. I wouldn't be shocked if he clears 1,500 yards this year. Honorable mention goes to Tyrann Mathieu, the do-it-all honey badger. New Orleans Saints, 2018, Marcus Davenport. Davenport never lived up to the hype after the Saints traded up to get him in 2018, therefore making him a miss. 2020, Cesar Ruiz. Ruiz has been a solid, unspectacular starter for 3 years with the Saints. I have to say that he's mid. 2021, Peyton Turner. Turner has played just 13 games in his first 2 years, racking up only 3 sacks. Thus far, I'd have to say he's been a miss, but if he can stay healthy, he does have a chance to be good. 2022, Chris Olave. Olave looks to be a future star at the receiver position, making him a hit. 2022, Trevor Penning. Penning played in just 6 games as a rookie, but graded out pretty well according to PFF. But thus far, I would say it's too soon to make any declarations. He's New Orleans Saints, Alvin Kamara. Kamara has slowly but surely gotten worse in each of the last several seasons, especially since 2020 when he had a league-high 21 touchdowns, which coincidentally was Drew Brees' last season. He has just 13 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons, and his yards per touch from scrimmage have gone down noticeably. Plus, he's probably going to be suspended for some off-field crap that happened in Las Vegas a couple years ago. So you're better off just ignoring this guy instead of thinking he's still one of the better backs in the league. At this point in time, I would say he is an inferior prototype of Austin Eckler, and not close to what he once was. New Orleans Saints, 2009 Drew Brees. Pretty easy one here. It's the only Super Bowl season the Saints have ever had, and Drew Brees was incredible that year. The Saints started the season 13-0 before losing a couple late regular season games, before turning it on again in the postseason, blowing out Arizona, scraping by Minnesota thanks to some timely turnovers by Brett Favre and also Bountygate, before defeating the Colts in the Super Bowl with help from Peyton Manning throwing a 74-yard touchdown pass to Tracy Porter in the fourth quarter. Brees probably should have won MVP this year instead of Manning, as he had 4,400 yards, 34 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions with a 109.6 passer rating in just 15 games. But I'm sure Brees will take the 8 touchdowns, no picks, and 117 passer rating in the postseason, as well as the Super Bowl MVP that eluded Peyton in 2009. Instead, New Orleans Saints, Dennis Allen. Allen is another one of those coaches where I'm not really sure what he does exactly. I know he comes from a defensive background, but he was horrible with the Raiders at the early part of last decade, and in his 1 year with the Saints, he was 7-10. So at no point in his head coaching career has he proven to be good. So I could very easily see the Saints moving on from him if they have another lackluster season. Therefore, I put Allen's hot seat ranking at a 4 out of 5. New Orleans Saints. Saints fans, you had first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback played for 15 years and 1 ring to show for it. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers got most of the crap for not winning more during that time, but you guys were even worse. At least Green Bay made 5 NFC Championship games with Rodgers compared to New Orleans making just 3 with Brees. Brees was a great quarterback, except of course for his last game where he played like dog shit and helped Tom Brady win another Super Bowl. Fuck you, Drew. But he was also a dink and dunk merchant and a stat patter and pretty boring to watch. Having 6 losing seasons is inexcusable for a quarterback of his stature, even if his defenses were terrible. Regardless, it's safe to say the Brees-Peyton era will be as good as it ever gets for you gumbo-eating fat fucks in New Orleans. The only bowl Derek Carr is leading you to is the toilet bowl. He will cry uncontrollably in at least 3 post-game press conferences this year, and you will rave about how much he cares, all just to finish with a mediocre record, which is only due to your division being so terrible. Carr is basically Kirk Cousins with eyeliner. But at least he's not an alleged sexual deviant like your annoying-ass scrub backup Jameis Winston. Remember when your team's front office helped cover up abuses in the Catholic Church? I do. Bountygate happened too. I remember. I don't even think anybody cares about Hurricane Katrina anymore, to be honest.
Lopsided, we can sit back in our lounge chairs and analyze to our heart's content. We've recently gone over the Herschel Walker trade, but the bonanza it became for Dallas, the obvious grave mistake it was for the Vikings. However, not all seismic trades are so cut and dry. What happens when a big move is made and no team benefits from it? There are plenty of moves where this happens, but one as high profile as the Ricky Williams trade? That's a gross overpayment that may never be topped. The New Orleans Saints weren't exactly a team of great fortune in the mid-90s. Their best legacy in the NFL to that point had been resounding failure. Paper bags aren't going to be enough to cover the horrible blemish that had been football in the Bayou. Endless mistakes on and off the field. Talented offensive weapons drafted and subsequently destroyed. Veteran players paid shitloads to be terrible 5 years past their prime. Big-name head coaches slowly rotting past expiration date, and a whole lot of losing. Try 20 consecutive seasons of ineptitude. And the 4 times they somehow made it to the big dance, they pissed themselves and lose in humiliating fashion. A window of slight competence had fallen to nothing by 1996. Jim Mora, the best coach the team ever had to that point, resigned in a barrage of fuck yous and diddly-poos. An anemic offense, a porous defense, a completely lost identity. The Dome Patrol had been outsourced to other cities. Saints owner Tom Benson needed to do something big. The fleur-de-lis was decaying into blight, and their next coach had to be someone with moxie and gusto. Turn on the TV, and there he is, Mike Ditka, the coach to lead the future. He'd been out of football for half a decade, he did little without Buddy Ryan, and that 1985 Bears team was so loaded that a child could have won with them, but legends like him don't grow on trees. His cigar-smoking, player-chewing, boisterous personality would take the Bayou from the doldrums of despair to even bolder doldrums of despair. 1997 and 1998 were so awful for the Saints that fans went to their emergency shelters and longed for Dick Nolan again. Iron Mike's CEO-like approach led them into an alligator-infested swamp. Some of the worst offenses that the Saints ever had the privilege of suffering through. Wideouts that couldn't separate, running backs that ran into walls repeatedly, and a quarterback carousel of death. Trading for a long-busted pre-Congress Heath Schuler. Trying to make Danny Werfel into an NFL-caliber option. A brief spell for Carolina's prodigal son in Kerry Collins, and a monopoly on the Billy Joe market. 2 straight 6-10 seasons. And Ditka was looking well past his expiration date as a coach. Threatened to quit the team during his first year, it was so bad. Iron Mike would commit to coaching again. Come the time of the 1999 draft, he had an epiphany. One word came to him in a winter's dream, whispering serenades of joy and glories untold. Sweetness. The man that made that 85 Bears offense hum. Walter Payton. New Orleans had a decent defense and a developing offensive line, but lacked running prowess. And Ditka swore to do everything he could to find such a man for his team. Fortunately for him, there was a potentially generational talent available for the taking this year. Hailing from the University of Texas, a Longhorn that could carry an offense like Sweetness himself did. That man's name? Ricky Williams. Finesse, top speed, elusiveness, and power. He was the total package. A unanimous Heisman Trophy winner. The then NCAA Division I-A record holder for rushing yards. An absolutely eccentric introvert who had a fear of crowds. He was a quirky fellow, but Ditka felt that was more to love. There was only one issue. The Saints were picking 12th. He was going to be off the board long beforehand. But that mattered none whatsoever. As Ricky was his Twitch streamer, Mike would simp over his lust whenever he could. This included the NFL owners' meetings, where he boasted that he would trade his entire draft to select Williams. Nothing was off the table for his prize. And that's the sound of your GM's leverage being completely destroyed. To be fair, New Orleans tried the same stunt the previous draft. They tried trading everything to the Colts and Chargers for a chance at Peyton Manning or Ryan Leaf, but were rebuffed. So what about the 1999 draft? It was very quarterback heavy, so Ricky wasn't going to be the first overall pick. Cleveland was gunning for a QB, and they chose to ruin Tim Couch as the first of many failures of their rebirth. Philadelphia number 2? The fans wanted Williams, but they had Deuce Staley who performed well. Quarterback was also a need, and they took Donovan McNabb, beginning a very hateful relationship between the city and their Syracuse alum. This is where desperation comes for the Saints. Cincinnati was picking 3rd, and Ricky was projected to go around this spot. Mike Ditka was screaming in GM Bill Kaharich's ear to make a move. What's the saying, make an offer they can't refuse? That's pretty much what they did, offering the Saints' entire draft in 1999. Their first-round picks in each of the next 2 seasons. A second-round pick on top of all that. To move up 9 positions. The only thing more insane than that proposal was that the Bengals rejected it. Surely a team as well-run and reputable as Cincy wouldn't bungle their selection, you say? Their pick was Achilles Smith, one of the biggest busts in the history of the NFL draft. This is why that city can't have nice things. So with Cincy choosing death, they had to wait for Indianapolis. They already had a quarterback in tow, a certain guy named Peyton Manning. Not to mention Marshall Faulk was due to get paid and the Colts might not want to pony up. All serenades of throwing picks at them were rejected from the get-go. Running back was on their mind. And all Ditka could do was gnash his teeth.
With the 4th choice in this draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Edgerrin James, running back, University of Miami.
Wait a minute, Edgerrin James? They picked him over quite possibly the best running back prospect in years? What morons! There's still a chance for the shotgun wedding to take place after all. The only thing standing in their way were the Washington Redskins. Thanks to a shrewd trade of Sean Gilbert to Carolina, they got the Panthers' first pick at number 5. They love Champ Bailey, but unlike Cincy, they refuse to say no to the smorgasbord being offered.
There has been a trade involving this 5th pick in the draft. The New Orleans Saints are now on the clock.
The trade had become official. The Saints brass celebrated like they had just won the Super Bowl. All of the burdens of a team placed on one man's shoulders for New Orleans' entire 1999 draft. And first and third round selections in 2000.
With the 5th pick in the draft, the New Orleans Saints select Ricky Williams, running back, University of Texas.
The Saints felt they gave up a good bit less than expected. They kept their 2001 first rounder at least. With their draft capital spent, Mike Ditka had only one thing on his mind as he lit up a victory cigar.
Gone golfing.
He would wish that he had stayed on that golf course for the rest of 1999. Despite finding the supposed piece that would take the Saints to greater places, the only destination was at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico. Mike Ditka transformed into a mockery of himself faster than he put on dreads during Ricky's initial press conference. Then they got married in an ESPN photo shoot. Only if Ditka wasn't the one wearing the dress, though. Till death do us part. It would happen on the football field. In their quest for Ricky Williams, they forgot to find a suitable quarterback for the team. The dueling Billy Joe show marched the Saints to the brink of despair. And then the team defense fell apart. The hits would keep on coming. Just like suffering the first loss to the Buccaneers in 1977, Ditka had to deal with the humiliation of being the first to lose to the resurrected Browns. On a Hail Mary pass, Iron Mike was rusting and buckling under the pressure. A shell of his former self in nearly all facets. They tried to throw everything on the shoulders of Williams, but he was visibly injured and ineffective. Not to mention missing team buses, doing interviews in his helmet, and being flat out miserable in this organization. 3-13 was their reward for going all in. And don't forget the Redskins have their first and third round picks. It was time to gut this festering carcass starting at the head. Pretty much everyone got fired. Ditka, Kaharich, the coaching staff, everyone. It's to no one's surprise that the trade set the Saints back years. Yet even then, they not only had a winning record and made the playoffs the next year, they won their first playoff game in team history. But that was unfortunately a blip on the radar. It was in spite of the Iron Mike era and that horrible trade. And the worst part of it all was that it wasn't Ricky's fault. Was it he that prevented Mike Ditka from shutting the fuck up? The problem with Williams was obvious from the start. New Orleans traded way too much. Even when looking at it from Jimmy Johnson's famous draft pick value chart, trading the entire 1999 draft would have been surprisingly fair value. But by adding the 2000 picks and what they ended up becoming, the Saints overpaid by at least 3 times that selection's worth. And that offer they made to Cincinnati would have been even worse. The expectations placed on Williams were ridiculous. And even as he put up respectable numbers in his 3 years in the Bayou, it wasn't anywhere close to what they thought he would be. By the time 2001 came around, the writing was on the wall for him here. Ricky never fit in with the team, and the Saints had just drafted Deuce McAllister. So in the next offseason, he was shipped off to Miami for what would be 2 first-round picks. As a Dolphin in 2002, he would finally realize the sky-high potential that made Ditka salivate. And it would be a fruitful endeavor indeed. In between going to India to smoke pot. As for the picks given to Washington, you may notice that a lot of these selections weren't made by Washington, but Chicago. Remember that the Redskins loved Champ Bailey. They traded up with Chicago at 7, adding the picks given by the Saints bonanza to select him. Chicago drafted a bunch of flops and traded several of the picks to Denver to move up as well. The Broncos at least got Desmond Clark and Billy Miller out of it, who were decent players in the NFL. Washington, they got Bailey, John Jansen, and LeVar Arrington out of it. Excellent players, but it didn't do much for their fortunes. You see, in May of 1999, they were cursed with a cancer known as Dan Snyder. He fired Charlie Casserly, the man behind the trade, just before training camp. Let that set the scene. Constant meddling and terrible forays into free agency turned them into a laughingstock. And the rest can be seen to this day. As a result, nobody truly benefited from this trade of trades. New Orleans was in the abyss, only reviving in the mid-2000s in spite of this deal. And Washington dealt with damn good culture. Even then, decades after the fact and the results well known, Mike Ditka would still do that trade and then some in a heartbeat. Gotta love a man with conviction. Sometimes there are just no happy endings. The Redskins would know a thing or two about that later on down the line, wouldn't they?
Blitzing, I would put the extra guys in coverage. Picked off. Look out. Gets past Manning, and it's Tracy Porter taking it all the way. Touchdown, New Orleans.
For the first time ever, the Saints are Super Bowl champions. For years, the Saints have been a team of mockery, but that time has finally ended. This team is absolutely stacked, and the Saints are bound to be remembered as one of the greatest dynasties of all time. What could possibly go wrong?
In the draft, you acquire Jimmy Graham in the 3rd round. By week 7, you are a somewhat disappointing 4-3, but you pop off 6 straight wins and finish 11-5 to secure a playoff spot. In the wild card, you face a 7-9 Seahawks. This is one of the worst teams in NFL history to make the playoffs, so this should be an easy win. What the fuck are you doing? How are you down by 14 in the fourth quarter to the Seahawks? You try to make a comeback, but it fails, and you get sent out in the most embarrassing way possible.
Out silent now, as opposed to when the Saints have the ball. Oh, look at this run! What a run! Marshawn Lynch still on his feet. Has blockers now. He's dancing his way for the touchdown.
Last year was a disappointing way to go down, but that won't happen again. You got defensive end Cameron Jordan and running back Mark Ingram in the first round of the draft. Drew Brees broke NFL records but got low-key snubbed of MVP due to Aaron Rodgers' 15-1 season. The Saints are big Super Bowl favorites, winning the South again by winning all their home games and with a 13-3 record. You have Pro Bowlers and APL pros across the board. You smacked Detroit in the wild card and are now traveling to San Francisco to face Alex Smith in the divisional round. This is an intense back-and-forth game, but you have the lead and the 49ers only have 40 seconds to score. Just make the stop and move on.
Smith on 3rd and 3. He throws to the end zone, and the catch is made by Vernon Davis for a Niners touchdown!
It happened again. Back-to-back years you had a team by the throat, but when it matters most, your defense completely shits the bed. And even worse, you let Alex goddamn Smith do this to you.
You blew it!
This year was doomed before it even started. Sean Payton was suspended for the entire 2012 campaign after the Bountygate incident, when defensive coordinator Greg Williams decided to put bounties on opposing quarterbacks to incentivize his defensive players. Even your intern head coach was suspended, so you had to hire an intern to the intern. The most impressive thing about this season is that you even finished 7-9, because you smashed the record for the most yards given up with 7,042.
Despite losing a lot of draft picks due to the Bountygate scandal, you still got a gem blindside blocker in Teron Armstead. You did much better than last year, going 11-5 and making a wildcard spot. This team is already back to previous form. You beat the Eagles to win your first playoff road game in franchise history. In the divisional, you're facing the Legion of Boom and the Seattle Seahawks. You'd think the Saints would have gotten destroyed, but that would be too easy. The Saints piss away opportunity after opportunity to win this game. Turnovers, missed field goals, giving up 140 yards to Marshawn Lynch. Look on the bright side. At least the Seahawks won the Super Bowl.
You end up drafting Brandon Cooks in the first round of the draft. Despite this, you have an extremely disappointing season as you finish 7-9. This wasn't like 2012. In 2012, you at least had the excuse of Bountygate making your team worse. This year, besides a couple of injuries, there aren't any excuses. Get fucking better.
This year was terrible. Honestly, the Saints were worse than what their 7-9 record shows. You traded Jimmy Graham to the Seattle Seahawks in exchange for jack shit and set a new NFL record with 45 passing touchdowns allowed in one season. Thankfully, you fired your defensive coordinator during the season. Hopefully, things will improve next year.
You have a decent draft given your lack of selections. Von Bell is a pretty good safety, and Michael Thomas is a great receiver when healthy. You go 7-9. Again. Maybe next year? Drew Brees can't keep carrying this team forever.
This team is finally back to Super Bowl form. You had a stacked draft getting guys like Marshawn Lattimore, Trey Hendrickson, Alvin Kamara, and more. You won the NFC South for the first time in years with an 11-5 record. You barely beat the Panthers in the wildcard round, but a win is a win. It doesn't matter. Moving on. In the divisional round, you're on the road against a team that hates you for all eternity. The Vikings. You have a very slim lead, but it's all good. This isn't like years past where your defense collapses and the other team has some sort of miracle.
Gano steps into it. Pass is caught!
This, kids, is what we call karma. The Saints' defense collapses in the playoffs again as the entire NFL world mocks you to death. No one feels bad for you. Bountygate has made this team straight up unlikable, and Minnesota gets the perfect revenge against your sorry asses.
You're finally back in peak form. This season was one to remember. You ripped off a 10-game win streak, you have one of the most electrifying offenses in the NFL, and you finished at 13-3. This team could very well go all the way. The last Saints team that was this good was back in 2011. You beat the Eagles 20-14 in the divisional, but now you have to play the Rams in the NFC Championship, which you are hosting. It was a tight game all the way through, but it seems that you have a legitimate chance to win it at the 12-yard line and 1:41 left to go in regulation. Drew Brees tries to hit Tommy Lee Lewis, but it falls incomplete due to a pass interference. You're gonna do it! You're gonna go to the Super Bowl! Wait, where's the flag? Where's the fucking flag? Are you seriously telling me that that wasn't a pass interference? That call was so blatant that a 2-year-old could have called it. Now you have to settle for a field goal and you end up losing in overtime. Ref ball ruins everything.
The Saints try to improve what they can by getting guys like CJ Gardner-Johnson and Eric McCoy in the draft. You went 13-3 again and are once again NFC South champions. This team has 11 Pro Bowlers and 6 AP All-Pros. For the love of God, please actually do something this year. In the wild card, you're hosting a familiar foe in the Vikings. But now it's your turn for vengeance. There won't be any miracles. There will only be death. Somehow, you have to rely on overtime to win this game. All you have to do is, oh no, trust your defense.
Cousins throws, pass is caught for the win! Kyle Rudolph and the Vikings are moving on!
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
You like that?
After a slow start, you rip off 9 straight wins and finish at a respectable 12-4. You beat the Bears 21-9, but Mitchell Trubisky received the MVP, so honestly, who really won? In the divisional, you face Tom Brady for the Battle of the Ages. You walk in confidently since you swept them in the regular season. However, you don't score at all in the fourth quarter and end up losing 30-20. And just like that, Drew Brees is gone.
Let's see what happened since Drew Brees retired. In 2021, you had a thrilling quarterback battle between Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston, which Winston won, but you went 9-8 and missed the playoffs. Alvin Kamara beat the ever-living shit out of someone in Las Vegas. Sean Payton left. Andy Dalton was your quarterback in 2022 and you went 7-10. Now, in 2023, you were in the worst division in football. Derek Carr is your quarterback. Sean Payton is the coach of the Broncos and won't shut the fuck up. And everything in New Orleans is fucked. Sounds about right. If I'm being honest, this team doesn't get enough hate. Their antics in the 2009 NFC Championship game could honestly be compared to the 2017 Astros. The Astros were able to at least win legitimately in 2022. Since Bountygate, all the Saints have had are some of the most hilarious playoff collapses of all time, and they absolutely deserve it. The only person I feel bad for in this case is Drew Brees. He had nothing to do with Bountygate. For over a decade, he gave this team everything, broke NFL records, and made the Saints an exciting team to watch. In exchange, he was granted with the worst clutch defense of all time. The amount of playoff games the Saints lost due to their defense is astounding. And now soon enough, Brees will be going into the Hall of Fame with a tainted Super Bowl ring. And as for the Saints themselves, they may do alright because their division is so shit, but they are definitely first-round exits. Perhaps they will be the next team to have the unbearable fate of a quarterback carousel.